What's up, moviegoers? Welcome to the Markio Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony. In this episode of the Markio Podcast, I'm talking about Freddy vs. Jason. Now, over the course of the Markio Podcast, I've talked about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and the Friday the 13th movies. Now, I've stated many times about how everything came to be. Paramount Pictures owned the rights to the Jason Voorhees character, while New Line Cinema owned the rights to Freddy Krueger, the house that Freddy built. And after Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Paramount Pictures sold the rights to the character of Jason Voorhees to New Line Cinema, which the next movie, Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday, was the first Jason movie to be released under the New Line Cinema banner. And at the end of that movie, Freddy Krueger is, shown with his glove coming up from hell and taking and pulling down Jason's mask, which then led to this movie. Now, this movie is the 8th installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and the 11th movie in the Friday the 13th franchise. The film is a crossover between those two movies and retroactively establishes them in a shared universe that pits the iconic characters against themselves. It is the last film in each series before their respective reboots. Now, the film marks Robert Englund's final cinematic appearance as Freddy Krueger. Kane Hodder does not return as Jason Voorhees, as Ken Kirzinger plays the role of Jason Voorhees. Now, I am a huge fan of both franchises. I love them dearly. I'm a huge horror fan of them. So basically, the plot of the story is that Freddy Krueger resurrects Jason and sends him to Springwood, hoping that he will create enough fear among the residents that Freddy will be strong enough to invade their dreams. That concept and that story outline is fantastic, and what better way to actually use that in a horror movie? And the thing about this movie is that, you think that both of them are the antagonist. They're both bad guys. Technically, they're not. Jason Voorhees is the good guy in this, and Freddy Krueger is the bad guy. And the elements of fire and water is definitely in this movie. There's a great battle between the two in Freddy's world, in the dream world, and it's just interesting. There's a lot of great, breaking the fourth wall in this, and Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger was fantastic. Everything worked about this movie, even though it was horror. There were some campy scenes in it which made it work to a great degree. And if you're a fan of the movies like me for the Freddy and Jason movies, this worked for you. This worked. The ending, however, the ending battle scene was just gruesome. All this blood going everywhere. It was interesting, and it made a lot of sense. Now, New Line, thinking that Freddy vs. Jason needed a fresh start, chose a different actor to play Jason. Cunningham disagreed with their decision, believing that Kane Hodder was the best choice for the role. Although Kane Hodder received a script for Freddy vs. Jason and met with director Ronnie Yu and New Line executives, Yu and Matthew Berry felt that the role should be recast to fit Yu's image of Jason. Now, Ronnie Yu is the director of Freddy vs. Jason, and if that name sounds familiar, because he directed Bride of Chucky. The release date for Freddy vs. Jason was August 15th, 2003, has a runtime of 98 minutes. The budget was $30 million, and it grossed $116.6 million at the box office. Now, Kane Hodder said that New Line did not give him a reason for the recasting, but according to Yu, however, he wanted a taller, slower, and more deliberate Jason. The role went to Ken Kirzinger, a Canadian stuntman who worked on Jason Takes Manhattan. Yu said that Kirzinger was hired because he was taller than Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. Now, Ken Kirzinger is only 6'5", compared to Kane Hodder, who was only 6'3", and Yu wanted a much taller actor than 5'9" Robert Englund. Kirzinger believed that this experience on Part 8 and his height helped him land the role. So basically, they hired Ken Kirzinger because he was taller than Robert Englund, and I guess Kane Hodder wasn't tall enough to stature, Robert Englund, because Kane Hodder's 6'3" and Robert Englund's 5'9", and Kirzinger's 6'5", but that stature was there. Kane Hodder, you can tell, was a much more muscular Jason. You can tell that he was more brute, and with Ken Kirzinger, he was more taller and lanky and skinnier, and it definitely shows, and you can definitely see that, and that was the interesting thing about this movie. Now, it was good because, Freddy Krueger is much more of a prominent presence in this movie, And having the water, fire aspect and the elements of that with earth and everything and how things are done was good. This movie was really fun. And if you made this movie in the 80s or 90s, it wouldn't have worked because those movies of Freddy and Jason were still going on. Now, the one aspect I did like about this was that there was supposed to be a sequel. From rumors in Hollywood and from what I heard in, certain news articles of movies and stuff. And there were, certain talk about what would happen. And several endings were considered for the film. And now the ending in the movie is basically Freddy's head is chopped off. Jason comes out of the water at the end, and he's holding Freddy's head. And then the camera zooms in, and Freddy winks and smiles at the audience. And that's it. That's how you end the movie. Great ending. But the one ending that was given and preferred was that one of them involved Pinhead from the Hellraiser franchise. But New Line Cinema did not want to secure the rights for the character. Basically, what would have happened is that Freddy and Jason are still fighting after what happens on Camp Crystal Lake at the end of Freddy vs. Jason. And somehow all the water drains into hell. And then they fall into this dark room or dark vast of emptiness. They're still fighting. One of them one-ups another and everything. And then all of a sudden, chains pop out and throws both of them against the wall. And all of a sudden, this presence of Pinhead walks out of the shadows. If you brought Pinhead in, and then if that happened, holy shit, the talk of the town, if you had Pinhead, Jason, and Freddy going at it in the next movie would have been fantastic. And the reason Pinhead was introduced at this alternate ending or different ending was because they're all in hell, and technically he rules hell, We know Pinhead rules hell. If he came out and all of a sudden the chains come out and he puts both of those two powerful horror icon figures against the wall with chains, and they're just looking at him, and Pinhead comes in and is like, shall we begin? Or, no fighting or something like that. It would have been great. And if Doug Bradley came back, great. We would have got to see Doug Bradley and Robert Englund, two of the biggest names in horror in one scene. It would have been fantastic, but they didn't do that, and New Line Cinema should have brought the rights to the Pinhead character, and it would have worked. So let me know in the comment section below what you think about Freddy vs. Jason. Do you think it was the right time to release this, or should they have done it earlier in the 80s and 90s at the pinnacle of the height and fame of their characters in the Nightmare on Elm Street series and the Friday the 13th series? And who do you think should have won this battle? Should Freddy Krueger have won? Should Jason have won? And do you like that ending where Pinhead would have been featured from the Hellraiser movies, stopping them from fighting in hell? Let me know in the comment section below about the questions I just asked. And stay tuned to the next episode of the Markio Podcast, where I talk about Friday the 13th, the 2009 remake. And be sure you click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell for new videos and new podcast episodes on the Markio Productions YouTube page. And follow Markio Productions on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And follow me, Anthony, your host, on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Filmstock. And follow the Markio Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll leave a link to all the social media accounts in the description box below. You can check it out and follow along. All right, everyone, that does it for today's episode. I'm your host, Anthony. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to my world.